Today we're counting down the 10 best series to arrive this year on one of the world's most important streaming platforms, a list that covers everything from direct action to epic fantasy, spy drama, adult animation, and a historically significant literary adaptation. The standard here is real quality and genuine audience reception because those two things don't always align, and that gap matters. The opinions are honest throughout, but before we start, it would mean a lot if you take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for your support. Number 10. The Night Manager, Season 2. Jonathan Pine is a hotel night manager in Cairo who, through a series of circumstances that don't end well for everyone involved, ends up recruited by British intelligence to infiltrate the inner circle of one of the world's most dangerous arms dealers. Season 1, starring Tom Hiddleston and Hugh Laurie and based on John le Carré's novel, was one of the most acclaimed miniseries of its era, building tension with the patience and precision that only the classic espionage tradition can consistently produce. A full decade later, Season 2 returns to the character on a brand new mission facing a very different threat, carrying the weight of someone who has already seen enough to know exactly what he's getting himself into. Hiddleston comes back with a noticeably darker version of the character, and the production maintains the visual and narrative standard that made the first installment so memorable and enduring. Intelligence-first espionage that privileges genuine craft over physical action has very few representatives of this quality in contemporary television. Number 9. Maxton Hall, Season 3. A scholarship student at one of Europe's most exclusive boarding schools accidentally discovers a secret involving the son of the school's most powerful family, and what begins as a forced agreement to keep quiet ends up becoming something far more complicated for both of them. The German production based on Mona Kasten's novel series became one of streaming's most unexpected romantic phenomena across its first 2 seasons, with genuine lead chemistry and a production that successfully navigated the tone between young adult drama and adult romance without collapsing into either extreme. Season 3 arrives to close the story of Ruby and James with the full weight of an audience that has followed the arc from the very beginning. Romance series of this type rarely maintain emotional tension all the way through to the end of their stories, and if this third installment manages that balance consistently, it has the potential to deliver a conclusion both German and global audiences remember with real affection, a genuine phenomenon that receives less critical recognition than it deserves. Number 8. Jury Duty presents Company Retreat. A group of company employees is invited to a corporate retreat without knowing that the entire event is an elaborately designed television show filming their every interaction. Only one participant knows the truth and must maintain the fiction while navigating actors planted throughout the group. The formula that made the franchise's first installment one of streaming's most beloved documentary comedy phenomena is redeployed in a fresh context: the corporate retreat, which generates situations and dynamics that the original jury setting simply could not produce. The result is entertainment that sounds straightforward in description and proves far more precisely constructed in execution. Directing actors to successfully navigate completely improvised situations without ever breaking the fiction requires a level of genuine craft that very few television formats actually demand or even attempt. Critics received it with 86% approval, confirming that the tonal achievement of the first installment was not accidental or lucky. For those who genuinely love the original, this is exactly the kind of follow-up that justifies the entire format's existence and then some. Number 7. The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 3. Thousands of years before Frodo left the Shire, Middle-earth was already in full upheaval. The war between elves and the Dark Lord was beginning to take shape, and in the shadows, a being disguising itself as something else was advancing toward its true objective. This production represents the largest single financial commitment in streaming history, and that investment shows in every frame. Extraordinary landscapes, theatrical-level visual effects, and production design that builds worlds with remarkable visual credibility. Season 3 arrives with the promise that Sauron will forge the One Ring, the most anticipated moment of the entire saga, following a time jump from the second installment. That said, honesty requires acknowledging that the first 2 seasons generated genuine debate. Certain casting and narrative decisions did not find support among significant portions of the Tolkien fanbase, and that criticism was specific rather than reflexive. If Season 3 can concentrate the story on what works best, the conflict between the established characters and the mythology's core moments, it has the potential to recover meaningful lost ground. The source material at this point in the story is genuinely powerful. Execution will determine everything. Number 6. Batman: Caped Crusader, Season 2. A version of Gotham City anchored entirely in the noir aesthetic of the 1940s, where Bruce Wayne operates as Batman in a city that functions essentially as a criminal organism wearing the facade of a functioning metropolis. Season 1 of this adult animated production with Bruce Timm at the helm, the creator of the beloved classic animated series from the 90s, was one of the most genuinely gratifying surprises in streaming animation in the year it premiered. Season 2 arrives with the character fully established in his double life, and Gotham even more deeply corrupted, expanding the villain gallery and deepening the backstories of Wayne's closest allies in meaningful ways. What makes this production genuinely special is its deliberate refusal to artificially modernize elements that do not need modernization. The visual style, tone, and pacing work precisely because they stay faithful to an aesthetic tradition that feels as intentional as it does timeless. For superhero animation fans searching for something with real narrative weight rather than surface-level action, Season 2 is a thoroughly earned reward. Number 5. Neagly. Francis Neagly spent several seasons as Jack Reacher's most capable and loyal combat partner, a former military operative with a skill set that on more than one occasion turned out to be the difference between resolving a case and everything ending very badly for everyone involved. This new series pulls her away from Reacher's orbit and places her in Chicago as a private investigator, where her own story begins without requiring viewers to have watched the original series at all to fully follow along. Maria Sten built this character with enough genuine depth across the seasons of the parent show to make her own story feel completely justified rather than opportunistic. Spin-off series always carry real risk. They depend entirely on whether the supporting character has enough substance to carry full protagonist weight, and in this particular case, that substance is genuinely present from the start. What Neagly does with its own narrative freedom, separated from Reacher's gravitational pull, will determine whether this is a universe expansion that truly works or simply a byproduct. The starting point is solid, and fan expectations are both genuine and well-founded. Number 4. Citadel, Season 2. The world's most powerful independent intelligence agency had fallen. Citadel was nearly destroyed completely, its most valuable operatives left with their memories wiped and their identities erased. Mason Kane and Nadia Sin wake up with no idea who they are, no memory of their shared history, and fragments of a previous life they recover piece by piece, while the world they belong to remains at war around them. Season 1 of this production, one of the most expensive bets the platform had made at that point, received a mixed response. Visually spectacular in scale, more uneven in narrative cohesion. Season 2 arrives with the focus firmly on addressing the weaknesses critics identified, and with a story arc that develops the relationship between the two protagonists with considerably more clarity and deliberate purpose. Richard Madden and Priyanka Chopra have on-screen chemistry that never fully ignited in the first season, and if the second gives them the narrative space to actually explore it, the result could be substantially stronger. A franchise with real potential that is still actively searching for its best version. Number 3. The Boys, Season 5. In this world, superheroes exist, but they are corporate assets managed by a massive conglomerate that turns them into brands, franchises, and symbols the government purchases at market rate. When a young man's life is destroyed by a careless superhero, he joins a group of operatives who use every available means to level the playing field against the powered. Eric Kripke built across the previous 4 seasons one of the most effective critiques of corporate capitalism and power culture that mainstream entertainment television has ever produced. The 5th and final season arrives carrying the weight of closing a story that was for years a genuine global conversation reference point, and honesty requires acknowledging that the reception was divided. Critics scored it at 93%, but audience ratings on popular measurement platforms landed at 49%, an unusually wide gap reflecting character endings that not all dedicated fans embraced. Anthony Starr as Homelander remains one of the finest sustained performances in streaming history, regardless of how the conclusion is ultimately judged. The series has ended, and the debate over how it ended does not erase what it built across 5 complete seasons. Number 2. The House of the Spirits. In an unnamed Latin American country, the Truba family moves through decades of political and personal history, stretching from years of rural life and faith in progress all the way to the arrival of a military dictatorship that destroys everything it touches. Isabel Allende wrote the original novel as an act of memory and resistance, and this adaptation faces the challenge of bringing to screen a multi-generational saga that combines magical realism with an unflinchingly concrete political chronicle. The production assembled a first-rate international cast and committed to honoring the novel's generational structure, which means a narrative requiring genuine patience, but rewarding it with a cumulative portrait of people, time, and continent that very few stories manage to construct at this scale. For viewers familiar with the source text or its history, this material carries emotional weight that extends beyond any technical assessment of production quality. For the rest of the world, it represents an opportunity to connect with one of the great works in the Spanish-language literary tradition through a format that makes accessible what the novel itself can make genuinely demanding. One of the year's most ambitious creative bets. Number 1. Reacher, Season 4. A former U.S. Army military police officer with no fixed home, no phone, and no luggage beyond what fits in his pockets, a deliberate drifter with an exceptional talent for finding himself at the exact center of whatever the most dangerous situation in any given town happens to be. The series adapts Lee Child's novels with dry humor, a premise that doesn't take itself too seriously, and action pacing that understands the audience comes for the character just as much as for the fights themselves. Alan Ritchson is the casting choice that makes everything else work. An actor with perfect deadpan, comic timing, and exactly the physical presence the character demands in proportions that feel like the role was specifically engineered for him. Season 4 is based on Gone Tomorrow, the 13th novel in the saga, and takes Reacher to New York City in another fully self-contained arc that requires no prior viewing at all. Consistent, without exception, direct about what it promises, and precise about what it delivers. The number 1 on this list occupies the top position because in its category, it genuinely has no real competition. Action television at its most effective and most satisfying form. This catalog delivered a strong presence throughout the year, with some of the most discussed global streaming titles among its releases. The number 1 on this list represents exactly the kind of television that consistently delivers on its promises, which in the action genre is rarer than it should be. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next videos. Comments about what should move up or down in the ranking are always welcome.